Hugs, everyone, and welcome to Pass the Mic. I have the pleasure of being here with this amazing man, Ed Lynch, who has done some phenomenal things in his life, not to mention he's given the ultimate of what community is. He's been a man of service. He's a vet, has served his country, our country. And we're here to sit down and talk with him. Normally, he's on the other side of the camera, but today I have him on this side. Ed, welcome to Pass the Mic.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Ed's song, you know we got to do a song. You Are My Sunshine?
That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah, probably the first song I ever learned in my life.
Really?
Sure.
Let's get ready. Tune it up. Here we go. Sunshine, you are my sunshine. You make me happy
When skies are gray.
I got a frog. You'll never notice how much I love you. Please don't take your sunshine away. Thank you, Ed.
Well, that's a first for me. Singing in front of a camera. Who would have guessed?
That's the song of the week. How beautiful, You Are My Sunshine. So, Ed, talking about being a vet, what does that mean to you?
Well, at the time, it meant an opportunity to take time to grow up because I just graduated from high school, didn't have a clue what I wanted to do with my life. Wasn't a very good student, so college wasn't a very promising option. So I decided to join the Air Force and did that for 4 years. And for me, it was a very good experience. It was between Korea and Vietnam, and so the Air Force sent me to a language school. I learned enough Russian to do the job they wanted me to do, and then they had me in remote Turkey for a year, and then remote Italy for a year, doing communications intelligence, and as a language specialist, involved some interpretation, but it was mostly just listening on a radio and recording things that were interesting.
So when you say remote, you didn't get to go out and hang out and party.
Not a lot. No. The history always appealed to me, and the places that I spent the time I was there. Things that were fun, exciting, big adventure. So for me, it was like a big vacation almost. So I appreciated that, and the military for me was a positive experience. I'm sure I matured to some extent in the military, just because you're learning to work in a big organization, take orders, do your job, show up, blah 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 blah, all those good things that you need to learn sooner or later. So yeah, all of those things were good.
And so I met Ed at the Center for Spiritual Living, Ventura, videotaping me. Well, not just me, the service.
Gonna do it again too.
This is true.
Yeah.
And I found out that you do this amazing videography, if I might, where you go and video the story of other veterans.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with that?
Interestingly, I was living up north at the time, and I lived next door to a veteran, a fellow who was a Marine in the Pacific during the Second World War. And he wrote his autobiography. He was a writer. So I helped him write his autobiography. I'm going to learn how to do videography because I had been on a small project that did some video for training on a project that I worked on. And at that time, of course, an individual couldn't afford all that stuff. So finally,
big
stuff,
equipment,
the big stuff, all the big stuff.
We've come a long way, baby.
All provide. Yeah, that's the evidence of how far we're coming. Looking at doing depositions for the courts, and that was one of the places where I could do video and get paid.
Did you hear juicy stories?
I did not even do that. I saw a program on TV while I was there about the World War II that Ken Burns did, and he did. At the end of that, he publicized the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. So I looked into that, and it was really interesting. I thought, Bill and I should do his history on video.
Oh, so you thought about doing his, okay.
So we did. now as I've met people and I see that they're vets or find out they're vets, I just tell them about the Veterans History Project. If they're interested, then we sit down and we do an interview. A lady from the Daughters of the American Revolution chapter in Conejo Valley saw one of my videos and approached me and said, we volunteer in a lot of places where veterans are residing. If a veteran's interested, would you do the video for us?
Oh.
And I said, of course I would. So I've been working with that group now since 2011, and we've done over 100 videos together. So they've been very active, very, very committed to this. The ladies, mostly ladies, we do have one guy who's not a DAR member, but he is a vet.
Okay.
And
is that a requirement,
no,
or did it just kind of work out that way?
It just worked out that way.
Okay.
Because so many of the ladies in the DAR are interested in history. They're genealogists for the most part, because they have to prove their genealogy to the Revolutionary War. That's how they become a member.
Oh, so they trace back their...
Yeah, right. Daughters of the American Revolution. They see a vet who wants to do it. They will come in early in the week and spend however long it takes talking to the vet about his experience, his military experience, and just kind of, bringing back some memories, usually looking over any artifacts that they might have, photos and things like that, see how they'll fit with the video. And then on Fridays, usually, I come in with my gear and they sit down.
And he's got a lot of gear. It looks very impressive. I just want to say I love it.
and they sit down and interview the vet. I do the video. So yeah, it all goes to the Library of Congress.
This is delicious tea. So the Library of Congress keeps them all on file on record then?
Yeah, they archive them.
Oh.
Yeah. And the last time I looked, they had over 100,000 histories from veterans, not just video, but they take written material, any kind of record that is first person material for a veteran.
Okay.
Right? I've tried to submit videos of a parent talking about a child that they lost in the Vietnam War in particular, and the Library of Congress didn't accept that.
Oh, really?
It has to be material that includes something that's the first person, the real vet themselves. Yeah.
Well, I know that has to be very healing for a lot of the vets to be able to tell their story.
Sometimes I think that's true, yeah. But the interesting thing is, by the time they're ready to talk about it,
yes,
they've done most of their healing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you get really more of the assets of what has taken place during that process.
Yeah.
This tea helped that frog. It's delicious.
Good. Yeah, but it's been a very, very rewarding experience for me. Meeting some of the most amazing people you could possibly meet, and the World War II vets in particular were a very, very different kind of person.
What do you mean there?
Well, they came out of a period in time in this country that they survived the Depression. They were mostly farmers, mostly factory workers.
Okay.
The office worker thing hadn't really happened yet. That didn't happen till later. So they were used to living in difficult circumstances and used to working hard and not expecting much. They didn't expect to be coddled by anybody. Did you say coddled? I did. And I have a few observations about that as well. But at any rate, these guys were really tough and independent. They went over there to get a job done, and they had the support of the whole free world, if you want to call it that.
Right.
And of course, they got as much support as you could possibly get from the families and the communities they came from. So they had a very different attitude and idea about what it was all about. And of course, they were there to stop the Germans, and they did. And they packed up and came home when it was all over.
Done deal.
Done deal.
Done deal.
And
go ahead.
I interviewed one vet, and he and his daughter went back to one of the villages that he had been in during the time he went in on D-Day, and he went all the way through Germany.
Okay.
And when the villagers found out that there was a veteran in the village, they threw a party.
Oh, really?
They threw a party.
They threw a party
They threw a party for this guy.
And this was in Germany?
In Germany.
My.
Yeah. And, it was probably in the 60s by that time.
Right.
But at any rate, they all remembered, and they
appreciated.
They really wanted to show this fellow that they appreciated what the Americans and the Allies did. And the daughter said she went into some of the buildings, and they had little museums there. And one of the things she was impressed by was letters from people who were in the village at that time or lived in that area, who said how amazed they were that the Americans came over to Europe, beat the Germans, and went home.
Ah, and that they didn't try then to take over the village.
Right.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
They came in service
and
to help people.
And the U.S. as a country, through the Marshall Plan, of course, did an enormous amount to help those countries restore themselves and rebuild and all that. So to me, that is probably the most noble gesture that any society can do, is to treat a defeated nation with that kind of respect and put those kind of resources into it. And what did that produce? One of the most stable parts of the world for the last 60 years. And Germany today, of course, is one of the stronger countries of the EU. And we did the same thing in Japan, and Japan is one of the more stable and prosperous countries in Asia these days. So to me, that speaks volumes about what this country's character was during those times.
That's beautifully said. My mother was a great history buff. I'm a little foggy. But I love that you're saying that what we gave to other countries, and that's part of our credo, to help and serve and protect all, and to be that nation that can uplift anything and anyone. And that's really beautiful. So much conversations talked about vets and all the pain, but this is such a beautiful side to see the beauty and the love that people have, an appreciation for vets. If you had to pick one of the stories,
I can tell you the one that always stands out the most. Amazing story of stories that I've been able to video. Lucky and I were over at the train station one day, and we were going to, I guess, Santa Barbara. And this gentleman, elderly gentleman, and his wife came up on the station, and he had this vest on and this hat on with all of this World War II stuff on.
Okay.
So I approached him, and I told him about the Veterans History Project, and said, I'd love to do your history if you'd like to do that. And he said, well, I'll think about it. And from his accent, I could tell he was German.
Oh.
So that was interesting.
Yes.
Well, the guy actually called me. I gave him a card. He actually called me. And it turns out that he was a youngster when the Germans were taking over, and he was experienced Kristallnacht when the Germans were hurting everybody in ghettos, and eventually they wound up in some camps. And he wound up in one of the camps. I think it was Auschwitz.
Ah.
And But it was before they, started doing some of the really, really terrible stuff. They were just incarcerating people in Auschwitz at the time. So somehow his mother had some connection and got him out of Auschwitz.
Oh, wow.
And onto a boat headed for Mexico.
From Germany?
From Germany, yeah. And that's what they were doing. The Jewish people, when they realized what was going on, they were trying to immigrate to other countries.
Okay.
Well, he got to Cuba. And for some reason he said, Cuba looked really interesting. So I talked my way into getting off in Cuba.
Oh, my.
Well, it turned out that the world decided that Germany objected to having Jewish people immigrate to other countries, and so most of the countries, in fact, I've never heard of a single country that did not refuse to let the Jewish disembark on their soil. So here he is in Cuba. The boat that he was on went to Mexico, left Mexico, and took everybody back to Germany.
Oh my goodness! So had he not gotten off in Cuba,
exactly,
he would have gone back.
He would have gone back.
Alignment is amazing.
It gets more interesting. Okay. So anyway, so he's in Cuba for a while, and then he's thinking, well, the Germans are here. The Germans were in Cuba. He's thinking, I think I'd rather be in the U.S. So he managed to con a German officer at the embassy into giving him a visa to get into the U.S. I don't know.
Is he 007?
I don't know how he did it, but at any rate, he winds up in the U.S. He winds up in St. Louis,
my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri.
He was got jobs teaching foreign languages. He spoke French and German and I think Spanish. So he was doing that, and he said, I decided I wanted to volunteer in the U.S. Army. So he went in and tried to volunteer. And they said, we don't want you. You're a dangerous alien.
Right, because he wasn't a U.S. citizen, right?
No, wasn't a U.S. citizen. No. So anyway, he said, "Oh, okay." Well, he went back to doing what he did, and then he said maybe 5 months, 6 months later, they contacted him and said, "Okay, we've checked into your story, and we realize you're not a dangerous alien anymore. So." Do you want to join? And he said, sure. So he joined up. He wound up in the U.S. Army Air Force at that time, stationed in southern Italy, not far from where I was stationed later. Was flying on B-17s and B-24s out of southern Italy that were bombing Eastern Europe at the time. And he was up there to listen to the German fighter pilots who were attacking the bombers and trying to give directions to those pilots that would mislead them and send them away from where the bombers were. So he was a radio operator. Yeah, he was a radio operator.
Wow.
And did that for the duration of the war.
So he's in the plane, or is he on the ground?
No,
wow,
he was in the plane.
So he's currently giving them blow by blow.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. So his job is try to confuse the German pilots and try to get them to go someplace else and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so after the war, they recruited him to be part of the, I think it was called the OS at the time. Okay. It was occupation. It was part of the occupation services, occupation forces, to hunt down Germans, German criminals, war criminals.
Oh my goodness, so really?
He spent several years hunting down German war criminals and making sure they got into the right kind of jails. He met his lovely wife there, who was working for another UN organization. She had been in a labor camp in Hungary, a German labor camp. So she was there with a UN organization resettling people. So they got married, came back.
They came back to the States.
They came back to the States.
Now, were they U.S. citizens by this time? Or
No, they became U.S. citizens later. So he taught in the schools here and spoke a lot to different school groups and civic groups about his experience in Germany and how becoming an American was a really, really major thing in his life. And it just two of the most sweetest people you've ever met. And so I was able to videotape both of them. And yeah. That one is probably the one that I was just the most blown away by.
I can understand. I'm blown away. I mean, I've been joking saying 007, but definitely he was used in such a asset for us.
Oh.
You know, I myself, when I think about veterans, I just think about the US of A.
Yeah.
You know, but we had many other men that were from different countries that came to help, to support, because they believed in what we were doing.
Yeah.
You know,
and of course, we have the Japanese who were incarcerated during the war by the U.S.
Yes.
And they had a battalion of Japanese who really distinguished themselves in Europe during that time.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was the 403rd
Wow.
Infantry. And
Wow.
they really distinguished themselves in Italy in particular, if I recall. So yeah, we of course are a country of every nation.
Yes.
And Sadly, some people have forgotten that.
Well, this is the beauty about Pass the Mic, because you get an opportunity here to understand that community reaches out no matter your race, your creed, your spiritual belief, where you were raised. It has no boundaries, because we're all in this thing together. And as we grow and have more understanding, we don't necessarily have to agree with what everyone says, but we can at least understand that people have a right to their opinion. And the beauty and the gifts that have been given to us through vets like yourself, to that gentleman, and many other vets. I want to thank you so much for sharing they were sweet stories, just sweet and beautiful, and they match You Are My Sunshine. They brought a lot of life and joy, as you do with everyone that you meet. It's a beautiful gift that you give back to the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Pleasure.
Thank you. So join us next week on Pass the Mic, and remember, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when clouds are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take your sunshine away. Mwah! I'll see you next week on Pass the Mic.